Hello, I'm Dr. Terry Susan Fine, Content Specialist for the Florida Joint Center for Citizenship, which is part of the School of Politics, Security, and International Affairs at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. Welcome to our Middle School Civics Highlight Series. Today we look at Benchmark 1.2, in which we will trace the principles underlying America's founding ideas on law and government. In Part 1, we focus on the principles contained in the founding documents. So we're going to be focusing on the principles contained in the founding documents that include due process of law, equality of mankind, limited government, natural rights, and the rule of law. So first we're going to be looking at the principles contained in the founding documents, and then we're going to look at some examples. We're going to be looking at examples of the principles in founding documents, some of which are also government documents, meaning some of which were also structured to govern, to include rules by how the people would live and would be treated by government. So let's first look at some principles presented in founding documents. The first we're going to look at is due process of law. The due process of law includes that the right of the people who are accused of crimes to have laws in place that treat them fairly and protect their rights. In essence, people do not lose their rights just because they are accused of committing a crime. They must be found guilty of committing that crime, in which case they may lose some of their rights. People accused of crimes cannot lose their life or freedom, for example, without fair procedures. What this means is, in the due process context, is that when people are accused of crimes, they may lose some of their freedoms, but there's going to be a process in place where they might lose some of their freedoms. So, for example, if somebody commits a crime and there's concern that they may not return to court for their trial, they may be held in jail until their trial. There are also some crimes where a person can, what they call is make bail, where they can pay a certain amount of money to the court, which in essence guarantees that if I don't show up in court, I'm going to lose all this money. And I'm still accountable for the crime. And so when a person pays a bail, that means that they're in essence guaranteeing, if I show up for court, you will give me this money back. However, if a person has been convicted of a crime, then there are certainly punishments in place, some of which might include losing their freedom. So losing freedom might be having to go to jail or prison for a period of time, being subject to house arrest, being limited into where the person can go, and having monitoring in place to ensure that the person doesn't go to certain places. So what this means is that there are fair procedures in place and there are processes in place for people who are accused of crimes, and even once they're convicted of crimes, even though they might be losing life or freedom, there are still fair procedures in place that make sure that people are treated fairly, even in the process of removing some of their freedoms, one of which could be their lives in very extreme circumstances. We also see a focus on the equality of mankind. This is the belief that all people are created with the same qualities, such that they would be treated the same before the law. So whether a person is rich or poor, whether a person is young or old, regardless of where they live, regardless of the circumstances, this principle is that everyone is treated equally before the law. So regardless of a person's characteristics, they are treated the same if they are accused of breaking the law, and thus they are treated the same before the law. Limited government. Limited government is the idea that there's a governing body whose power is limited by a constitution that is written down. So thus, the only powers that government has are those powers that are listed in that Constitution. Natural rights. Natural rights is the belief that individuals are born with basic rights that cannot be taken away by government. So natural rights are going to include that a person is born with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, for example. These are natural rights we'll be looking at in just a moment. And therefore, if a person is born with certain rights, government cannot take them away. And then there is the rule of law. The rule of law is the idea that those who govern must follow the law, and no one is above the law. So even the people who write the laws are not writing the laws for everybody but themselves. People who write the laws must also abide by the laws. This means that's why we often hold public officials accountable for violating the public trust, because they have broken certain laws and therefore they should be prosecuted because they have violated certain laws, even if they played a role in writing those laws or in standing up for those laws when they were campaigning for office. They can still be held accountable if they end up breaking those laws. So what are some examples of principles included in founding documents and in government documents? Well, first we have the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is an English document. It is from 1215, so it was written hundreds of years ago. And it's also written in a style of English that we don't use in the United States. So this excerpt that you see takes a little bit of examination in order to get a full idea about what it means. So the example that we provide here focuses on the due process of law. No freeman shall be taken or in any way destroyed, nor will we go upon him, nor send upon him, except by the lawful judgment of his peers or by the law of the land. So what this is saying is that a person who is free shall not have any part of their life destroyed, taken from them, for example, unless there is a law against what they've done, but they are convicted of a crime, and there has been a judgment by their peers. So we often look at a jury system as judgment by one's peers. That is due process of law, and that concept is found in this very, very old, difficult to read document called the Magna Carta. Then we have the equality of mankind. We see in the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal. Now, the Declaration of Independence did not establish a government. It was a set of principles about what the government should be and what the government should not be. So the Declaration of Independence is a founding document, but it's not a government document. But it does say all men are created equal. Limited government, also in the Declaration of Independence. Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So this means that the people make up the government, and it's the people who are being governed who give their consent to be governed. That is the limitation on government. If the people insist on being governed less, on there being fewer laws, fewer rules, more freedoms, then they're likely going to elect people who also share that point of view. If people want there to be more rules and more laws for the sake of the public good or public safety, then they're likely to elect people who also support that point of view. So the limitation can move based on what the public will support. Natural rights. All men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So the concept of natural rights is that once a person is born, they exist, and they were given, just for being born, certain unalienable rights. Unalienable means cannot be taken away. And these unalienable rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then we have the concept of the rule of law, and that is the right of the people to be secure against unreasonable searches and seizures, which shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation. Many of you recognize this. You might have heard it on television about the concept of getting a search warrant, the concept of probable cause. This is in the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which is both a founding and a government document. It is part of the Bill of Rights. And this Fourth Amendment, in essence, says that the people can be confident that government will not search their possessions, will not search their bodies, will not search their creations, unless they have a probable cause, unless there is a good reason for engaging in that search, and they must convince a judge. That's the oath or affirmation part, that indeed this person or their property or their writings or other possessions should be searched. Thank you so much for joining me today for our middle school civics highlights. Do you still have questions? Please contact us using the information that appears on the screen. Till next time, I'm Dr. Terry Susan Fine. Thank you for joining me.